The Thursday, January 21st meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court will come to order. The prayer and the pledge this evening will be by Rick Cochran.
We pray with you. Father, we thank you for your healing power. Our friend and comrade here on the court is back with us today, for Harvey is recovered from the surgery. We thank you for all those who have prayed for him, for the recovery, for the blessings to those who should be permanent. Father, tonight as we conduct the court for our duties to the Washington County, give us the wisdom and discernment to conduct our business. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carly, would you call the roll?
Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Rick Cochran.
Here.
Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ecke.
Here.
Ann Harbison.
Here.
Sharon Lloyd.
Here.
Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison.
Here.
Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Here.
Gary McHenry.
Here.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Our next item is selection of the presiding officer due to the absence of the county judge. A justice needs to be elected to presiding officer. This will be elaborated further by County Attorney Steve Zaga.
Thank you, Justice Pond. The applicable legal provision here is Arkansas Code Annotated Section 14-14904 D1B, and it simply reads, in the absence of the county judge, a quorum of the justice by majority vote shall elect one of their number to preside, but without the power to veto. What I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, under Robert's rules, the proper procedure would be this: for you to nominate a presiding officer, and if there is more than one nomination, that you winnow that down by vote. And because we are a Freedom of Information Act state, you're going to have to do that in public. It can't be done by secret ballot, either by show of hands or calling a roll if we come to that point. But a nomination, a second, if there are no further nominations after the nomination and the second, you can move to close nominations and accept the single nomination by acclamation. If you have competing contestants, then you have an election until you have one.
And I recognize Mr. Lundstrom and then Ms. Harbison.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Eva Madison to chair tonight's meeting. Thank you.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, and Ms. Harbison, you had your hand up.
I would like to nominate Butch Pond. He's the longest serving JP on this court, and I think that should be recognized. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have Eva Madison and myself. Is there any further?
Move nomination cease.
Second.
That's a simple voice vote, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? How do you suggest we have a show of hands?
And, Mr. Chairman, I think the simplest way to do that is to have a show of hands for those who, for Justice Madison, and for those who would vote for you. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, there are 14 of you all, so there could be a 7-7 tie. Just realize that. So,
okay.
So I'd say show of hands.
All right. May we have a show of hands for Justice Eva Madison?
6, 7.
Okay, maybe somebody will hold out on me. Show of hands for Justice of the Peace, Butch Pond.
Well, Butch, you didn't vote. I'm sorry. Justice Pond doesn't look like you voted for yourself. 1, 2, 3. However, the statute reads a majority of the quorum. 7 votes doesn't get it. So y'all can discuss this now.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, you've got competing hands up, and I
Okay,
think Justice Sue Madison might have been first.
Justice Sue Madison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that J.P. Sharon Lloyd chair the meeting. Okay.
We already had
I
nominated.
think fine.
I withdraw that.
Thank you, though, Sue. Justice Madison.
Justice Harbison.
I think the only fair way to do this is flip the coin, and we'll just flip the coin, and whoever wins.
I'm sorry, you can't do it that way. To chair the meeting, you have to have a majority of the quorum. Somebody's got to win by a vote.
All right, you suggest we have another show of hands for Justice Eva Madison?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do.
Point of order.
Thank you. In this case, is a quorum those that are present?
No. Well, and even if it is, it's still, either way, they're 14-year-old. It's still a majority. It still would take 8.
Okay, not the most votes and not,
It's not a plurality.
Let's have another show of hands for Justice Eva Madison. How many we got?
5, 6, 7. You have 8 now, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Oh,
9.
Okay. 9. So I voted for Eva. Now,
Thank you, Justice Pond. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Would everybody like me to move to the middle, or is it short enough? I'll stay where I am. What?
Come down here and sit right here.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to keep Steve in order.
I need to rival Justice Pond in his pounding abilities. He shook the desk earlier. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The agenda is adopted. The next item we have is approval of the minutes. I know Ms. Sandage circulated several copies of the minutes. Ms. Sandage, which ones are actually, is it just the October ones that are before us? Oh, thank you. Okay. So we have the minutes from several meetings in October. That's why you're busy. October 5th, 6th, 8th, and 12th is the body's preference to take those individually or all at once?
I'll do all at once.
Okay. Justice Madison?
thank you, Madam Chair. I only read 2 sets of minutes today. October, I think, 10th, and did I miss an agenda? Okay, well, I'm not prepared to vote on minutes that I haven't read.
Okay.
Could I ask Ms. Sandage to tell me which ones I sent to her today so I know which ones I read?
You sent the 8th and the 12th. But
So
the
much-
5th and the
Okay, I
6th
remember the
minutes
10th.
were still before that.
10:8 and 10:12 is what I sent you? Okay. Well, I have read those minutes and sent very, very minor corrections to Ms. Sandage. And I'd just like to say that the quality of the minutes has skyrocketed in improvement. They are. I would also comment, however, that these are old minutes. I mean, it took me way back in time to remember when we discussed preserving open space in the county with the regional planning people. So anyway, I would move approval of minutes with the tiny corrections I sent to Ms. Sandage from October 8th and October 12th.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. I think Justice Lundstrom had a remark.
I was going to make a motion, but it's too late now.
Okay. She beat you to it. Right now, we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from October 8th and October 12th. Is there any further discussion on that point? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. Now, the remaining items are the October 5th and 6th minutes. Justice Lundstrom, you're recognized.
I make a motion, we pass those minutes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the October 5th and 6th minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
I would like to abstain because I haven't read.
Okay. Ms. Sandage, did you get that? Thank you. Okay. So moving right along in our short agenda, we are moving on to other business. Does anyone have any other business items to discuss this evening? Justice Madison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm glad I got here in time, and I apologize for being late. We've just been through a budget process that seemed to go on, and I've felt like many of the budgets that we reviewed, the people in charge of those budgets felt like both the coming year and the year we've just finished, we had absolutely squeezed them down to their last paperclip, and that there was no wiggle room left in budgets whatsoever. And there is an issue that has bothered me ever since we discovered it, and that is the issue of the recording that was going on in our break room. If you remember, we discovered that back in the fall sometime, that we were being both audio and videotaped in that room. And I'm deeply troubled by that. And I would like for us to be made aware of which budget that came from and how much it cost, and whether new cameras were bought, and whether that was part of the security camera issue that was presented to this court. Now, I've been assured that the recording had stopped, but I would like to know what happened to the recordings that were made. Are they still somewhere there? Have they been used for anything? And then I would like to know where the cameras and the devices were in this room, because I've studied the walls, and they were very carefully hidden away, and I can't tell where they were, and without knowing where they were, I can't tell that they've been removed. So I feel like we're owed an explanation for having been taped, both audio and visual, without our knowledge. And it disturbs me that that happened. And I would like an explanation, especially for how much it cost and which budget it came from. And as a sideline, whether there were any laws that were broken. So whatever committee is appropriate, or whether this body, or whether we just want the department that did it to come forward, I just think we need an explanation. That's all I have.
Thank you, Justice Madison. I was asking Mr. Zega if there was a need to formally refer an issue to a committee, and I'm not sure of that.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
If it's the body's wish, you can move to refer it to a committee, and it seems to me Public Works is actually the appropriate committee for this.
Okay.
Need to make a motion.
Well, I know J.P. Cochran had his hand up, so if I can recognize him first.
Okay, well, I have a question for Attorney Zega. Since this occurred in an area where we conduct our court, is this information on the video recording and audio recording subject to the FOIA laws?
Yes.
Okay, so we could do a Freedom of Information Act request to get that information?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Justice Lloyd, you're recognized.
Can I make a motion that we refer this to the Public Works and delve into it?
Okay. We have a motion and a second to refer this issue to the Public Works Committee, to J.P. Bowman. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay. Thank you. Is there any other business? Justice Bowman, you're recognized.
Yep. Guys, before I left in December, I had a meeting with our road department and a group called Telligis that puts monitoring devices on vehicles. I know there's been a lot of concern about the use of vehicles here at the county. And talking to the representative, we didn't meet in person, but on a conference call type situation. He has said that he projects that it would cost about $20,000 to put the devices on those vehicles used here in the courthouse and on the county vehicles, road vehicles, that don't currently have devices on them. In discussing with some of the road department people, Donnie even made a comment that he'd kind of like to know where all his vehicles were at any time. He had an experience with one of the graders that it didn't have enough hours on it, and the operator was unaware the degree of intelligence they could get off the information. So he allowed the device to run all night to make it appear he'd been out on the road working. And so we don't have any idea how much abuse there might be in that kind of situation when Donnie wasn't even aware of those kind of things. So there's a great deal of information that could come off of this. I can't tell you exactly what the cost would be because they have to have a technician come and look at the age of the vehicles and see what kind of equipment would be required. But he proposed that it would probably cost about $20,000 for the first year, and probably about half of that cost would be defrayed the following year. And of course, there's a lot of information comes off of them. It's not only where they're driven, how fast they're driven, braking, accelerating, on it goes, even maintenance issues on those vehicles. So there's a great deal of information that comes out of this process. And I don't have the details about who monitors, but I do think that we could go ahead without a great deal of additional cost as far as personnel is concerned to be able to get a good idea about exactly how and where our vehicles are being used, how they're being serviced, and so forth. And I didn't want to follow up on this without some approval from you guys because we could spend a lot of their time, a lot of my time trying to investigate this thing if you weren't at all interested in that process. So I'd sure like some feedback from you relative to what your position would be to look at this process and see if it's something we might be interested in having them come by and give us a quote on exactly what it would cost, and then having some numbers to work with, and then having the representatives come and talk to us about the whole thing. So any feedback from you would certainly be appreciated.
Thank you, Justice Bowman. J.P. Dennis, I had you down next. I wasn't sure if you wanted to speak on this issue because Mr. Zega had asked to speak on this issue. If you're on the same topic, I'd like to stay on topic, but...
It was the same topic, yes.
Okay, well, you're recognized then.
But if Mr. Zega was going to clarify some more, I'll listen to clarification.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All I would say on Mr. Bowman's, Justice Bowman's point is, if it's $20,000, it's going to have to be bid, and that will involve writing some specifications, which will involve necessarily talking about some of the things that you just talked about, Justice Bowman. For example, exactly what data we're going to collect, in what format it's going to be, if it's going to come off on an Excel spreadsheet, and doing some other things such as, and I've got a little bit of experience with this, bumper numbering vehicles that we may not be doing now, and if we are, how we take care of that. Having said all that, I kind of thought when I heard this idea that it would be at least $20,000, and it seems to me as though it's going to require bids for that reason. I just thought I'd let y'all know that.
I guess my point is my perspective on this thing from this point is a matter of finding out how much support or discouragement we'd have from even considering this, because $20,000 is a lot of money. I think there's always going to be questions out here about the use of the equipment until we have something that gives us absolute specifics, and I think this would do that. So my only focus is trying to figure out what you guys would like to do, and then if you think it's a great idea, we move ahead to accumulate some more information, and then once we have that specific information, we can decide to put it aside or to move ahead.
Thank you, Justice Bowman. Justice Dennis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know that we live in a world of technology. My ankle bracelet's right here. They literally can listen to my conversation. They can see me at any time during the day they want to see me. And I'm serious, and they can tell that I'm sitting in the courthouse in this chair. And they can tell if I'm at work in Walmart, they can tell what aisle I'm on. And they can tell if I turn around. You can turn it around like this, and it turns around. We just had a conversation about our pictures being taken in a break room. I live in that all day long. There's cameras everywhere where I work all day long, everywhere I go except for the bathroom. And, I'd point out to all of us that we were just offended terribly that we are on camera and on video in a place that cameras and videos exist. I forgot to take that out. That throws me off when talking. I'm sorry. So we were offended by it, and then we want to turn around and we want to tell our employees, well, we want to track you everywhere you do, everything that you do and everywhere you go. And basically you're saying, I don't trust you when you do that. And we're going to pay $20,000 to tell them we don't trust you. And if you've got an employee that you feel like is doing that, I think it should be handled, should be handled anyway. It's not a matter of a right for privacy because they don't necessarily have a right for privacy. But I can tell you the way you feel is that, okay, you don't trust me. And so if you're wanting to pull the morale down of employees, it's a good way to pull it down. If you want to pull it just a little farther down. I'm glad we're having the discussion about these things, but, and I know you can track on cell phones, you can track so many different ways. I just don't know that we need to spend $20,000 to track it. So it's just a personal feeling. I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. I don't do my job one bit different because I have it. I do it the same way I would do it even if I didn't have it. But I know that it's morally, it makes you feel bad to think that they've got to treat you like a grade school kid and have you tracked the entire time. And so, and I know technology is so good, you can probably get it cheaper than this because, it's out there on everything. It's on your cell phone. They can track you, it's everywhere. So I don't see the need for it. I don't like it. And so that's my experience, or how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Lundstrom, you're recognized.
Well, I think it's important to note that we've already had one circumstance where we were paying an employee to grade, and he obviously was not grading. And it was this very equipment that made his supervisor aware of that. I don't know what the outcome was of that whole situation. Talking about cell phones, my son has this on both of his children. Both of my sons do, because they travel back and forth to college, and he knows right where that car is. He knows if it's stopped, and he can call and wonder, why is it stopped? Is it wrecked or whatever? Gives them a lot of information that's very helpful. I have some experience with this in the trucking business. When I was with Polar Express Trucking Company, they established it real early on when this equipment first started coming out. J.B. Hunt did the same thing. But it goes beyond just spying on people. And this is one of my problems since it was brought up, talking about the morale of employees and so forth. There's been quite a bit said in the editorial section of our newspaper about how horrible this Quorum Court is, of degrading the morality of our employees and so forth. And I would challenge the editorial writer to go to the minutes and the recordings of these meetings and find one place where a single employee was denigrated in any way, verbally or any other way. We're here to operate and take care of budgetary problems and so forth. And if that upsets some employees, I think they just have to live with it. I do that in business every day. Everybody does. But anyway, what I would like to see with this particular system I would like to see Justice Bowman bring a representative from this firm in if they're willing to do so, and just give us more information so we're more aware of what. I do know, like Attorney Zega said, somebody's going to have to monitor it, and somebody who knows what they're doing is going to have to monitor it so that they can get the correct information off of it. That would be a little bit of a concern of mine. Of course, I'm concerned with the $20,000 too. I don't like to throw $20,000 at something. But if it can actually help us, I would be in favor of it and would vote for it. And this is the information he was asking for. But I would like to hear from somebody with the company, even if we have to go out on bid. Then other companies could come in and give us the information on their program. But I would be interested in it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Justice Harbison.
I don't really, practically all state vehicles are now under GPS or whatever that is. But I only heard the road department mentioned. What about the sheriff's department? They have more vehicles than the road department. If we don't include everybody, then we're discriminating. And so that's going to cost a lot more money. So, we're talking about $100,000, and we might as well, decide if that's what we want. And I am, let's not just pick out one department and say we're going to do this. There's vehicles in, all county vehicles need to be included, including the sheriff's department. Thank you.
Justice Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go on record saying I think it's a fabulous idea. I think we might save a lot of money because of little side trips that might not happen. I saw a county vehicle pull into Walgreens yesterday, and I realize that incidental stops are okay, but still it would be good to know how many incidental stops there might be. And I would like to point out that these employees will be told they're being tracked. We're not going to secretly track them. They are public employees being paid with public dollars. They're driving public vehicles. To me, that's very different from audio recording us without our knowledge in an area where we had an expectation of privacy. There's hardly ever more than one or two of us in there, so you would certainly presume it was a private place if I needed to tell my husband something or anyway. I would like to hope that this would tell us if vehicles were idling unnecessarily, because I have a big problem with vehicles sitting idling, whether it's at the McDonald's drive-thru or just wherever. The city of Fayetteville has a no idling policy on their vehicles, and I think that's important. I realize gas has come down a little bit, but still you're burning gas and getting 0 miles per gallon if you're sitting still and idling. So I think that would be very important to us to know. And I think it would be a good service to the public. So I would very much like to hear from one company, two companies, whatever, and see what we might gain from this. And I don't feel the need to do the sheriff's cars, really, but I think J.P. Harbison is correct that, if, Ron Wood has 4 vehicles in his department, they should be tracked. If IT has, I've forgotten how many, that they ought to all be tracked so we know where they are, every county vehicle. And I think it would be money well spent, but let's learn some more. Thank you.
Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may address Justice Bowman, I do have some questions on the issue. Is this an issue of trust or efficiency? If we could identify what the issue is, the purpose for the GPS, and the goals that we as a county would like to achieve in presenting this, I think we would have a clearer understanding of this GPS devices being installed in all county vehicles. And I believe that the employees would receive it much more readily if it was, this is why, and these are our goals, and this is our purpose, as opposed to feeling that Big Brother is spying on them. I know that Coca-Cola has implemented this 2 years ago, and there was just a little resentment from the drivers, but they said, well, you know, if you're goofing off, then you will be it's about time they found out that you were goofing off. But I would like a framework of understanding the issues, what our objectives are, and the purposes and the goals. And if we can clearly communicate that to the employees and tell them it's a good thing, I think they would receive it a lot better. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I've got some other people on the list. I've got Justice Dennis, and then I've got Justice Pond. And they have, well, Justice Dennis has spoken on it already, but you're recognized, Justice Dennis.
I guess it was in response, thank you. It was in response to road graders. I guess J.P. Lundstrom had said that it is already on road graders, is it not?
On that particular one, it was, yes.
Is it not on all road graders?
No.
I thought that it was.
No. It depends on how new the equipment is.
Okay. It's not on any dump trucks?
I don't know.
So we just use it on some things, but not all things?
Well, let me say that we're having a lot of dialogue of this, and I want to try to cut down on that. But I think that we're finding ourselves needing to refer this probably to a committee, probably to Public Works. So I know that Justice Bowman was interested in people's thoughts, and I'll let everyone continue talking. But I think the proper resolution of this is going to be to send it and our questions on to the committee so that we can hash it out there. So are you? Okay, thank you, Justice Dennis. So now I'll recognize Justice Pond.
Because of the expense, the value of the equipment, and we have some very expensive equipment, I could see a need for monitoring the whereabouts and the usage of that equipment. It would be a handy tool for the department heads of the road department. It'd be a security issue as much as anything else with the things going on at this day and time. Just like I can see a need for having, for security reasons, monitors in every room of this courthouse. We spend an awful lot of tax money. We have security officers at this front door. They rove this area. And I can't see anything wrong with having cameras, video, audio, in any room in this courthouse, including this one. This room back here does not belong to us. It belongs to the people of Washington County. And I really don't believe that people are going into any of these rooms, elected officials or not, and doing inappropriate or dangerous things. But to me, it is a security issue with the rooms of the courthouse and the equipment. Thank you.
Okay, Justice Bowman.
I'd like to say that the primary reason that I came up with this name was a great friend of mine is a manager of a service company. And he took a new responsibility with a very large fleet of vehicles. And he didn't know where his vehicles were at any time. These guys have very specific assignments. And with this system, he can tell if they're at a job when they're supposed to be, how long they're on that job, and what they're doing in the meantime. And he said one other thing that he got out of it that he was encouraged about, number one, the maintenance issues. He could tell exactly how that equipment was being maintained, how they were being driven and so forth. But he said one of the benefits that he was really amazed about, they had one vehicle that was off in an area on ice and snow. And they were in an area that didn't have any phone service out there where they were. And they got into the ditch, and nobody knew where they were. And this device was able to identify where the vehicle was, the fact that it was not running, and there was no communications with it. So they were able to come to the rescue of a guy out there in a very dangerous situation. And I don't know how much that might apply within the county, don't have a clue. But I guess, folks, the thing that I felt justified at least investigating this situation was there's always been a lot of concern about exactly how our vehicles are being used, where they're taken. Is this an appropriate journey or not? Is it appropriate use of the vehicles? The take-home issue is another issue, that we identify exactly how many miles and exactly where that vehicle's gone. So as far as I'm concerned, it answers a lot of questions. One of the key things that really kind of surprised me, in the meeting, Donnie made the comment about it would be kind of helpful to know where all of his vehicles were. And coming from Donnie, I was really kind of surprised about it. I thought that might be an intimidation for him to have people questioning where his vehicles were and how they were being used. But, you know, guys, one other thing that came out in that comment, he made a comment about how difficult it was sometimes to get all these guys out of the shop on the mornings when they come in down there and they're shooting a breeze and getting their details for the day, having a cup of coffee, and how hard it is to get everybody out on the job. This is going to identify exactly when those vehicles left the shop, you know, how they went to work, how long they were on the job, and what's going on. So I think there's a great deal of information we're talking about here. Guys, if you're out there doing the job, tearing them up, you don't have anything to be concerned about at all. If you're not doing the job, then there's going to be some intimidation, just like the guy running the grader. And I don't know why he might not have been using the equipment as much as he was supposed to. But the fact that Donnie was encouraged about some of the possibilities for the thing, as far as I'm concerned, gave me a real positive nod there that I had not anticipated. Thank you.
Mr. Zega has asked to make some quick remarks, and then I'll recognize you, Justice Essery.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Justice Bowman and fellow or other JPs, please be very careful with the word intimidation when we're talking about what we do to our employees. You said, I think you said, if you're not using it right, there would be some intimidation. I think what you meant to say was there could be some disciplinary consequences on the job. Intimidation is a bad word. Thank you.
Justice Essery, you're recognized.
I think this is a really good idea. There's a lot of real positive things that come from this. A couple of questions I have, though. What's the payback? If it's going to cost us, this is a wonderful cause, and we're all jumped on it right now. But are we going to still be this enthusiastic about it when it comes to November? That's a big concern of mine. And in the coming years, that the newer equipment has this already on it. So if it already has it on it, then maybe it's something that we could figure out a way to take a little bit smaller bite and maybe just bring part of the equipment that needs to, instead of going for the full-blown thing. And then my last comment is that personal experience has taught me that something like this, the cost is going to be about $20,000. It may well cost the county $10,000 to $20,000 just to have somebody to monitor that. This is a tremendous amount of information, and somebody's got to do something with it. Somebody has to monitor it. And so that's another consideration that we just need to put in when we're looking at this. Thank you.
Justice Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. One is I do think this is very commonplace. Every company that I know that manages a fleet, they just do it to keep up with their cars. It's not an invasion of privacy. It's just they want to know where their assets are, and I think that's fair for the citizens of Washington County as well. So on that, I think it has some benefit. It also helps them keep up with when maintenance is due, all of that kind of stuff. To Justice Ussery, I think you make a great point in that where's the money coming from, and is this a financially responsible thing to do? And if it saves unnecessary use on our vehicles, I think there may be some easy recouping of some of that outlay. But my question would just be, I would like to know what our options are. Is it charged by vehicle? I suspect, I texted the sheriff a moment ago, but I suspect our sheriff's vehicles are already monitored by GPS. I'd be very surprised. I could be wrong, but I'd be very surprised if they're not already for safety reasons. Other law enforcement vehicles in the county I know are monitored currently. The commander knows where every vehicle is for the officer's safety, so if they need to send backup, et cetera. So we might not be talking about that many vehicles if we're not already, if we've already taken the sheriff's department off the list. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be great to see some options and to see what choices we have as to how these would be monitored and what the cost would be. I think not knowing the cost makes it very difficult to make a great decision now, but I certainly think it warrants understanding what the costs are, what the options are. And the last thing I'll say is when it comes to monitoring, I know a lot of these folks that are monitoring fleets only monitor by exception. So the cost of continual monitoring or broad spread monitoring, they don't pay that cost. But if sometimes just knowing that that tracking is out there and available if someone wants to go dig it up eliminates some of those problems. And then if you do need to do it, it's very specific. You just tag in and figure out where that one vehicle is, and you don't have to have a whole staff doing the monitoring and trying to keep up with it. It's a little more streamlined and a little more simple where it's not super labor intensive and it's really just at will. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Justice Cochran.
Thank you, Justice Madison. The software capabilities that go with these GPS devices on equipment, I'm familiar with an over-the-road company that I worked for many years, is very good. They have a feature called geofencing in the reporting, to where essentially you can get an exception. If the route that the truck was going to travel, or the vehicle was going to travel, they'd know if it went out of route. And there's questions, to be. So it's, you manage by exception with the software capabilities of these. And it would, as we look at these manufacturers of this equipment and the reporting, we just need to take a look at how easily we can manage by exception, knowing that at any time, as Justice Maxwell said, you could go back and look at the details. If you suspect there's a problem with a particular vehicle, and go back and look at all the records and see where you're going. So it does help to maximize the efficiency of your fleet. Does it pay back? Yes and no. We certainly, if we were to do it ourselves, to drive around every day and see if everybody was where they were supposed to be at, we'd spend an inordinate amount of time and labor and fuel and wear and tear. So that's why we don't do it. And consequently, we have a few people that maybe take a little liberty, and we wouldn't know about it. But it seems like the shop foreman is interested in it. I think we should pursue it and see where we go from there. Thank you, Justice Madison.
So I think that's everyone who wanted to speak. What is the pleasure of the court at this point?
Madam Chair,
Justice Lundstrom.
I move that we move it on to Justice Bowman's committee, Public
Second.
Works, for consideration.
We have a motion and a second to refer this to the Public Works Committee for further development. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay, we're keeping you busy. Justice Bowman, did you have another comment?
I read on the website that our county judge has said they've got a state of emergency about the rain issues here in the county, and I wasn't familiar with what the details were about that. I'd sure like an update on what is going on in that regard.
Who is in a position to be able to do that for us?
I
Mr.
can
Zager?
speak a little bit to it.
Okay.
Justice Bowman, we've had a declaration of a disaster area from the governor. We are currently waiting. Mr. Johnson, Rick Johnson from Emergency Management, gave a detailed report on this at the finance meeting last week before last. Last week. Actually, Ms. Bybee, who has been working on some of the FEMA issues, may have some more development. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Renee, but basically, we're waiting on two different streams of funding now from FEMA, or that are FEMA guaranteed, and they are basically dependent on whether it's residential or not, and there are certain thresholds we have to meet. Renee, am I misstating anything, or is there something else that we ought to be talking about?
I think you're correct. We're in a holding pattern.
Would you mind coming up to the microphone just so we can be sure to get you?
I think Mr. Zaga was correct. At this point in time, we're waiting on a presidential declaration, and so it's just waiting at this point. And we'll keep you informed and let you know as soon as funds become available, for sure.
Thank you, Ms. Bybee, for the update.
Thank you.
I guess my question was, where's the damage and what the extent of the damage? I guess I don't have an idea about. I was out of town and missed out on a lot of the activity here. So.
The extent of the damage in Washington County, we had to get, I think it was $3.35 per capita. So we needed just over $735,000 in damages to qualify. We just went out on a preliminary assessment with FEMA, drove them around to, I think we chose 5 sites that day. And in that one day, we assessed a little over $800,000 in damages. The primary damage that the county had was our largest damage was Dye Creek Bridge out towards West Fork. And that was pretty significant damage. The judge closed that bridge. There's alternate routes available right now. There was some other significant damage and lost gravel on other county roads.
Okay.
And Elm Springs had quite a bit of damage on a couple of their bridges.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bybee. Justice Madison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to know, and perhaps Ms. Bybee would know, if the county has spent any money on this emergency. Have we dipped into emergency funds for this emergency? I mean, I guess we're going to need some more gravel.
The county has not dipped into the county judge's emergency disaster fund, if that was your question. That has not been touched. There are funds that have been expended through the road department budget. Any of those funds that we're expending on storm damage that are possibly related, and we can get FEMA reimbursements, we're tracking. And then whenever FEMA does come in, we'll do a project worksheet, and those will be reimbursed at 87.5%. So the county's portion will still be 12.5%.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else? Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is,
You come to the microphone, please.
The other night we had, the bridge damages and the loss of gravel.
Be sure to turn it on. Not on.
It'll be red.
Carly's got the magic touch. Then there is the opportunity for individual private assistance too. We did have some damage over the old courthouse, and I've been able to talk to Ron about it briefly. I don't have the dollars to insist on right now. Mainly they were pulling out carpets and airing things out, and a lot of the offices had to be vacated. So we're going to have that on top of the road. That's something that we have to do. We can handle right now. But the biggest expense is the low water bridge on Dye Creek. It's a huge low water bridge, and that'll be the biggest expense. And we won't be able to do anything on that until we know whether or not we're going to get FEMA money. Other than that, there's another smaller low water bridge that was damaged that we can take care of, and then there's the gravel issue. But I wanted to let you know about the old courthouse too. I don't think that got reported the other night.
Can I ask is there insurance for anything when there's facilities damage?
There may be, but as you know, if it's flooding, we're not covered. You know how flood insurance works.
Okay.
But I haven't talked to Ron about that yet, whether or not what this will be covered, because it wouldn't be flooding at the old courthouse. We've had some other moisture and leakage problems there too, mainly coming in on that first floor. But this came in like on the third floor and the second floor, and so there is possible insurance for that. That's something that needs to be explored.
Just curious.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's
Mr.
a
Butler.
good question, yeah.
Justice Ecke, I'll recognize you again.
thank you. This is a completely different question. I was wondering if we had an update on the lawsuits against the county, but specifically, I did have questions. How are we going to pay for this if we find that if the judge finds that the county is liable? Whose budget is it coming from? Where is it coming from? I mean, I know risk management's only going to pay so much. The attorney for risk management refused to settle earlier when we were all asked to go to the federal courthouse. And he said, no, we're not going to. I felt that he should have settled right then and there. And I'm a little concerned with the depositions that are being disclosed. And what's our plan of action?
Mr.
Thank
Zega,
you.
I'm going to let you handle that one.
Thank you. On the first three that were filed, there's something called a dispositive motion deadline coming tomorrow, where the county's going to ask that the lawsuits essentially not get to go to court. It's called summary judgment, and that the court throw them out essentially without getting to a jury. And by the way, Justice Heckey, Mr. Braswell, Ms. Przyzakowski, and Mr. Holland. And Mr. Jarbo's is somewhere down the line. I'm not privy to that one because I might be a witness, and I'm not privy to the scheduling order on that one. So that is the next big event. That's tomorrow. Yes. The response from the plaintiff is due 14 days from that. We get, I forget whether it's 5 or 10 days after that to respond, and then the judge will make up his mind. And that's a judge question alone. Mr. Braswell's case is set for an out hearing, in other words, a jury trial out sometime in April.
So it is a jury trial.
It's a jury trial.
The judge trial is who?
It's not a judge trial. It's a judge reading paperwork.
Okay, judge reading paperwork.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am. And that's all three of those cases are in front of Judge Brooks.
Okay.
To answer your question, two questions, twofold. If there's a verdict against the county, the verdict and the attorney's fees for the plaintiff will be paid to the limits of liability out of the risk management fund. Okay?
Okay.
If there is a verdict in excess of that and we do not appeal and we do not, if eventually we have to pay, that question becomes a question for the people around this horseshoe from where that money comes. And that is the only and best answer I can give you.
Okay. How much does risk management assume?
$350,000 per case at
Per case.
maximum and $500,000 per year aggregate.
Heeks.
I guess there's no room for speculation at this point, and it's just a waiting game.
I am not, I learned a long time ago not to try and guess.
I'm trying to read your mind.
Yes, ma'am, and
I'm sorry.
I'm not interested in guessing, especially, yeah, I'm not going to do that. With all due respect, Justice Ecke.
Okay. I just, I am curious, and I guess I would like for all of us to kind of start thinking of a plan of action in the event.
Well, let me.
Or is there a plan of action?
Yes,
Is there,
yes. Well, there is a plan of action with the risk management fund, and I want you all to understand something. I'm not trying to hide the ball on you, but there are litigation strategies as well that I just don't want to make public.
Certainly.
Okay, so everything I just told you is a matter of public record from the scheduling orders, okay, and is also a matter of public record in terms of our risk management fund and what we do and what we participate in it.
Mm-hmm.
I can also tell you that while I have voiced opinions and things like that, I don't make any decisions. The risk management fund makes the decisions about whether to settle the case or not, whether to make offers to settle the case or not, and so a particular case. And so sometimes lawyers say, let's try the case. And oftentimes when you're dealing with, and I know we don't have insurance, the risk management fund is not insurance. However, when you're talking about this particular kind of situation, it's a lot like insurance. And I'll tell you the perfect analogy for this. Justice Ecke, if you were involved in an automobile accident tonight and somebody sues you over that accident, and I don't know who your insurance carrier is and you don't have to tell me, but if that person doesn't reach a settlement with your carrier and sues you, the ultimate decision about settling that case, while you can have all the input in the world about it, actually comes down to your insurance carrier. And if there is an excess verdict beyond your limits, you're going to pay it, or you're going to find ways to not pay it legally. Okay, that could involve personal bankruptcy. By the way, I'm not trying to paint that picture for. What I'm saying is that's the eventual potential outcome. Okay, and risk management although it is not insurance, works in much the same way. We participate in the risk management fund, the risk management program. We do not have a, we don't get a voice completely
Right.
in the decision of whether to settle or not.
Certainly. Well, I'm not interested in having Washington County declare bankruptcy at all.
I don't think any of us are.
Okay. I just wanted an update. I wanted kind of be
Yes, ma'am.
with the flow of what's going on
and
what do we need to do and what decisions are we going to be faced with?
If there is a, depending on the decisions the judge makes, y'all could be called again for a settlement conference. I would, on any of the pending cases, I would, however, caution you again that the details of those settlement conferences by federal law are confidential.
Right.
So what you hear in those rooms is not to be discussed, and that even trumps FOIA. Thank you. Did I answer your question?
You sure did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Justice Maxwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to request, that, and this may be going to happen anyway, but just that, could we be informed at each step of this way as these hearings are held and the judge makes a determination, et cetera, just so that we can be maybe a few steps ahead in thinking about how we're going to handle depending on the eventual outcome?
Yes, and the reason I haven't reported particularly, there haven't been any public, again, trying to balance between not tipping hands with litigation strategy, but there haven't been any public outcomes to report to you yet. And I suspect that the first substantive public outcome is coming soon.
Yes.
And yes, I will be happy to report to you one way or the other.
Thank you. And that makes perfect sense to play wise, but as much as possible when it's prudent to share with the court. I think that would help all of us to kind of have our mind wrapped around either worst case scenario, best case scenario, or somewhere in between and start formulating how we're going to sort through whatever part of that falls our lot. Thank you.
And it very well, if I can follow up one more, it very well may be that the media beats me to the punch, and that you may hear it through the media. Literally, the media checks at the courthouse for these orders, and I think subscribes to Pacer, and so they know what's going on sometimes before I do. You may read it in breaking news before I get it to you.
Check your Twitter. Okay. Any other business? Well, I have one little item. I was asked on behalf of the Animal League to present a check tonight, and I'll pass around what they have given me. Somebody gets a paper clip because they didn't get stapled well. But the Animal League had proceeds from their 50 Shades of Stray event that was held last year, and I think they've been working with the county on some things. And basically, the president, Teddy Cardwell, was out of town, wanted to make this check presentation tonight, and asked me to do it since I was a founding board member. So I have a check tonight to the shelter in the amount of $8,164.19. Ms. Cardwell's letter, I think, outlines sort of the current status of things. They are asking that the money be designated for capital purposes because that's sort of consistent with how they like to have the money spent. So I have that check. I assume I will give it to Ms. Bollinger. I don't know who I give money to.
I think that goes to Angela, doesn't it?
Ms. Beeks, can I give it to you? Okay. Okay. Well, I will give it to you, and I assume then at some point it will come back to us to realize, once it's in the bank, it will come back through us to realize the money and whatever we do. It'll come through Ms. Bollinger at that point, I think. No? I surely think it's... Okay.
I don't deal with money.
Okay, well...
It'll be deposited with the treasurer.
It'll be in that grant fund.
Okay.
Shelter grant.
And then we'll appropriate it to the animal shelter. Okay. And can we do that with a restricted purpose for capital? Can we do that?
Appropriated into the animal shelter grant fund for that project.
Okay, but if it comes with a string attached, that's not, we can do that. I think that was their question.
We have to, if it comes with the string, we have
Okay.
to. If we don't
Okay.
want to use it for that purpose, we
Yes.
got to use it back.
Okay, good. Well, I will make sure I get the check to Ms. Beeks, and I just want to express my gratitude to the Animal League and especially Carmen Nelson for the work that she put into that event. I know a couple of us were there, I think. J.P. Bowman, I think, might have been there. Weren't you there? Were you at the event? Oh, yeah, okay. I knew someone else was there, and it was a really fun event, and they obviously did very well, and they're sharing that money. And Ms. Cardwell's letter outlines that with this check, that it will bring the 2015-2016 support to over $31,000 that they have provided in kind as well as cash support to the animal shelter. So that's to be commended. Justice Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me see if I understand a few things here. This check, how does it get deposited in the county's funds? Who gets to sign a check like this?
Treasurer.
The treasurer, I guess, is what they're saying.
Okay.
The treasurer would sign it. It goes into then the general fund, and then it will have to come back through Ms. Bybee as a grant. Is that?
It won't go into the general fund. It will go into the animal shelter grant fund.
Okay.
It's got a separate fund set up.
Okay.
Will
Good.
we have to appropriate it then?
Yes.
Okay, that's why I'm trying to figure this out, because I didn't know we could just pick a arm of government to give money to without it.
Yeah, it's still got to be appropriated.
Okay, so at that point, we would appropriate it for capital projects? Is that what we
Ms.
would do?
Bybee, why don't you come forward and tell us how the grant process works?
Like all grants, they're appropriated, and you set up line items in that grant fund budget.
Okay.
If the strings to this money is capital projects and they have a specific project in mind, then we would be tied to that just like we are for all grant funds. It would be no different. And anyone can donate to the animal shelter. And what we do is we take those donations that come in and we put in the animal shelter grant fund so it doesn't go into general fund, and it's specifically earmarked for the animal shelter. And then we bring those appropriations to you. Is that quarterly that we do that, Cheryl?
It depends.
It depending on the
What
amounts.
the project is and when it needs to be done. You'll do it quarterly unless it needs to be done.
So if I wrote a check to the animal shelter for $100 as a donation,
It would be
without any
deposit-
specifications how it was spent, it would at some point come in a pool of more money that we would have to appropriate
Yes, ma'am.
and be considered a grant of some kind.
It would, yes.
Okay, okay. Madam Chairman, I'd also like to ask, in the second paragraph, the fourth sentence, maybe I'm supposed to read between the lines or know what this means, but since we are unable to meet the conditions, what does that mean?
I think that's with the additional documentation Ms. Cardwell provided.
I'm supposed to keep reading.
I'm sort of a messenger
Okay.
in this, so I'm
Thank you.
sharing the information and providing the check. So,
Thank you, that's all I have.
Justice Bowman, did you have a comment?
Yes, please. Thank you. Guys, I think that we ought to really try to get some public exposure for the Animal League for what they've done here. I'd sure like for us to do a press release, and if possible, go ahead and do an interview and have it on TV to have them present and say thank you in a public way so that they might be recognized for what they're doing for us.
My understanding is that Carmen Nelson is probably going to be taking care of some of that, and I think she's working with Ms. Ledgerwood to do that perhaps tomorrow.
Should that?
Yeah.
Well,
So
that-
I think there's going to be like a fancier presentation of not the actual check, but one of those really
Okay,
big ones.
All right, okay. Well, I just think it's really, really important. When we think about all that they've done for our animal shelter, it's really important, and we know for a while that was not available to us, and I'm thrilled to see them back and helping out. Thank you.
Any other business? Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more thing. I'd like to recognize Ms. Bybee for the work that she does as our grants administrator and all the money she pulls into Washington County. I want to say thank you for a tremendous job and a great job that you do for us. And you are the value-added employee to Washington County, and I want to say thank you.
Agreed. Okay. So we're now moving on to citizen comments. We're finally there. I know we have one person that usually likes to comment. He's not paying attention right now. Are you? You sort of look like you were anxious, but do we have anyone who would like to make a comment tonight? Sir, would you please come forward and speak into the microphone and tell us who you are?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Anton Blanstead. I was a former constable here in Springdale. One of the comments that I would like to make, roughly 2 years ago, the county judge had ordered the reduction of constables from 15 down to 3. And what was quoted to me was Amendment 55 and 14-14-401. And I was looking at it, and I don't see where that power exists. I can't find where that power exists. On on Amendment 55, subsection 2, clause B, the quorum court may create, consolidate, separate, revise, or abandon any elective county office or offices during the term except during the term thereof, provided, however, that a majority of those voting on the question at a general election have approved said action. In essence, y'all are supposed to vote for an election. The people are supposed to guarantee that they've had their say in whether they keep one office or another, and then they give you permission to actually vote on it. So I also looked at 14-14-401. The county court of each county in this state shall have the authority to divide the county. To divide the county into convenient townships, subdivide those already established, and alter township lines. It does not say it may vacate, as 55 says that the quorum court may do. It says that they can alter the lines. That would be an apportionment. You don't want 500 people in one district and 50,000 in another. You have to keep the populations fairly even across the board. So the constables should never have been able to be abolished.
And sir, I just want to, we've got about 1 more minute, so to give you a little warning.
I would like for the quorum court to actually take the time and study into this situation and reinstitute the constables as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other citizens' comments? You got to come to the microphone. Sorry. I think we know you, but we need you to state your name for the record.
Rodweller. I was going to talk about the whole solicitation process for this monitoring equipment and just how we go about it, but I can take it offline and I'll talk with J.P. Bowman on this, because I think I heard a lot of good information and a lot of concerns, but I think we really need to look at the total cost of ownership on these and what are the alternatives analysis. Because we need to look at what the other departments in the county are doing. They may be doing something that there's economies of scale. So I think I'll work with you on that one. I have a list of things to go through. And then it could pass the muster of being litigated or challenged if you go out for a solicitation. You go with bids and someone says protest it, you have something to go back on and say, here's the reason why you did it. So I think Mr. Zaga could help with that.
I'll talk to you about that after the meeting, sir.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodweller. Any other public comments? Well, we have reached the final item on our agenda, adjournment. Second. We have a motion, a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned.